right, I think we'll get underway. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services Committee. I'll begin by asking if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. I'm not seeing any. Okay, we'll get right into it then. Could I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor Clancy. Councillor Chapman. 1 second here.
I just would like to speak to item 3.4.
Item 3.4, the building bylaw update?
Yes.
Okay, so motion to take that out of consent. Those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Councillor Chapman, when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm not sure who I should ask this question of. I'm just wondering why this isn't part of the budget process. I mean, we're in the middle of the budget season, and you're asking for a new full-time position. So I was just wondering why we're not saving this for the budget.
Mr. Sealing?
So good afternoon, and through the chair. On the building division has spoken to the Kitchener Development Liaison Committee throughout the year 2023. There's been no objection from the industry in terms of moving forward with this full-time equivalent request. The full-time equivalent request will help us deliver more residential units quicker to the industry in terms of permit issuance. So we felt that there was a need to move forward. I wish I could have been here in June of this year, but unfortunately due to scheduling, we're here in October.
Okay, Mr. Reedman to add?
Yeah, through the chair, and so this position is being driven by Bill 23 changes, and so typically when there's legislative changes that are driving some of our hiring requests, then we do bring requests outside of the budget process. This one also is fully funded by building, which is non-tax supported budget as well, so it's funded by building permit applications.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh on this?
Yeah, just quickly, obviously we can't take luxury of the budget cycle when we need to, I guess, be responding to change in legislation. At the same time, the necessity of building more homes, we got to act in the promptness. So is there certainty that we can hire this person, or is it going to be a reorientation from the planning department from one FTE towards the building department?
So through the chair, this would be a one new full-time equivalent staff person.
Okay, so, and has that posting been put out already, or that would be after the approval of this report?
Through the chair, through the approval through this report, and then we would go forward.
Okay, well, I just hope that you guys are able to hire within the expediency. My next question is going to challenge you more in the sense of, do we have the appropriate staffing complement within the building department, not just for the permitting aspect of it, but on the planning consideration where there needs to be extra set of eyes. Because again, to my earlier point, we just got to build more a lot faster. And do we have enough staffing to accommodate that?
So through the chair, this is one of the steps that the Development Services Department continues to look at, and that's why we're bringing the recommendation forward to help get more units to the market, like in terms of permit issuance.
Okay, all right. Just I think it's more of our opportunity to give comment to our staff and saying, at least in my perspective, there's support to the building department for you guys to be able to help facilitate the building of much more homes much faster.
Yeah, there's no one else in the queue. Just by way of brief comment, I think it's absolutely a fair question to ask, because typically these things do come as part of the budget process. But it is outlined well, and I'm glad Mr. Reedman raised that these decisions of this type within the building division do not actually impact the taxpayer at all. So we'll take the motion for that one separately. Those in favor? And that's unanimous. And the balance of the consent items, those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to our first discussion item, the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation Partnership Renewal Agreement. Mr. Bloom, you're taking us. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. Through the chair, since 2015, all of the municipal partners in our region, so the 3 cities, the region, and the 4 townships, have partnered on the development and support of an organization called Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation, who I know you've met Tony many times before. Essentially, this is an organization that leads all of the foreign direct investment, the business attraction work outside of our region on behalf of all of our municipalities. This agreement has been, we've had an agreement in place since 2015. The current agreement is set to expire at the end of this year. A subset of area CAOs have been working with Tony and his board to develop a new agreement leading forward, and what you have in front of you is what is proposed in front of all councils. Of note, the current agreement did not contemplate any funding increases to Waterloo EDC, so we have not been giving them any type of annual inflation over the past agreement. What the new agreement does consider is an increase in funding from all levels of our regional governments. Including for the 3 cities, an increase from $320,000 a year graduated over the next 3 years, and you can see we've attached a funding schedule as reference. At this point, all cities seem to be supportive of the proposed agreement, but it is a decision of each municipality, so we're here to present it to this council for your consideration. Mr. Lametier is here if you have any questions of either Waterloo EDC's mandate or the work they've done or the accomplishments they've made. But we've tried our best in the report to share much of the success that his team has brought to our region. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There are some questions beginning with most folks here, beginning with Mayor Bogdanovich.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Davey, and I guess my question will probably be to Mr. Lametier, so if he wants to come down. But it's really a combination. You can indulge me just for 1 second, a comment with a question built into it. So the comment part of it being, certainly, I can say that from my perspective, I've been very happy with the work that Red Sea's been doing in terms of economic development and not only focusing on the mandate that you had, but when there was a need to go beyond that mandate during the pandemic through the work that was done by Best WR and sort of all come together to tackle some of the challenges that were being felt in the community during those COVID years. You played a strong leadership role in that, and really want to thank and praise both you and the team for the work that's been done. The one area of tweaking, I guess, that perhaps I'll request, and I don't want to, look to formally put anything in the agreement or anything, but just to note it here, and it's really on some of the comms pieces. And I know it's something I've talked about with some of my colleagues around the Horseshoe as well. I think collectively we've from the beginning went the route of recognizing that because of the university and other things, the Waterloo brand is the way to go in terms of what we do. But at the same time, there is an importance of ensuring that there's a distinguishing between the city and the region, and that the region, in fact, includes all of the municipalities, Kitchener, of course, being the largest. And so I guess my question to you would be, is there a commitment on the part of you and your team to work with us to fine-tune some of that communication so that going forward, I think at least it more accurately reflects the collaboration of all 7 municipalities in the region?
Short answer is absolutely yes. Longer answer is, a number of Kitchener companies have been able to expand and stay within the region. There's lots of examples, but just off the top of my head, Aru DevTech, major Cambridge expansion, we were able to keep the Kitchener location, affluent and growing. You look at Bosch and ETAS in the city of Waterloo, that was originally a Kitchener story. And so increasingly, there's more of these opportunities. Maybe an example for creative industries would be Odyssey Interactive, headquartered in Waterloo, hiring a lot of Kitchener people. And so, when we are marketing to C-level executives, we tend to, for Google Analytics and a range of other reasons, go with shorter words. But whenever we drill down, the Kitchener brand is really important. It is, if you look at our results, I know that one of the attachments, I think it's the third one that's been shared, shows that Kitchener is essentially number one as far as the total value of investments, something like 36% at the end of 2022. And at 40%, also number one in terms of the number of wins. And if we extend that to year-to-date 2023, it's a big number. It's over $700 million. So essentially for every dollar Kitchener has invested, it's yielded $277 in return. That eclipses the region of Waterloo's return. But I hear you on the comms. I know a lot's been invested in Make It Kitchener. So wherever possible, and I think we need to take some care and ownership of that, we'll make sure that we highlight the awesomeness that is Kitchener.
Great, thank you. And to be very clear, I mean, I recognize and I think collectively we're appreciative of the work that's been done and quite frankly a number of the economic development wins that's happened. But we, as you know, we're an ambitious municipality in that regard, and we've invested a fair bit through in our initial EDIF and now our Make It Kitchener 2.0 strategies, including in brand building. And so we want to just make sure that there's an opportunity where possible to see that accurately reflected. So thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Sorry. Tony, you might want to pull the microphones up. I don't know if you can raise the podium a little bit. And you might want to make yourself comfortable. There's 6 people in the queue for you, lots of questions. So.
All good, okay.
Okay. Next up, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So I had a similar question about the communication part, and I see in the report that there'll be annual reporting, and I just wondered if you could give us the details of what those reports would contain from a Kitchener perspective.
Sorry, could you repeat, what reports are you referring to specifically?
Well, it says annual reporting of key performance indicators.
Oh, okay. So the key performance indicators include the number of marketing qualified leads, the number of investments that have landed in the region, the value of those investments, the number of jobs created, the number of jobs retained. And those are the primary metrics. There's a bunch of more granular metrics that address where the investments land, some of the key follow-up items, the ability to expand. There's often a phase 2 or a phase 3 in some of these initial investments, but those are the metrics that we report publicly.
And do you keep a record of jobs lost?
Do we keep a record of jobs lost? No, we don't. Because business retention is really kind of the domain of the City of Kitchener economic development staff. We do mobilize around companies at risk, Councillor, I should say, through the chair. So for instance, there are a number of examples, Irwin-Heimer being a good one, Road Truck on Shirley Avenue. When that company went into receivership, there were a lot of weekends and evenings working with the province, making sure that through the CCAA restructuring that we were able to get support to those impacted workers. So, our collaboration blueprint is such that once the company's landed and, the ribbon's cut, the lead goes to the City of Kitchener Economic Development staff and we engage as required. But there are a number of occasions where retention drives it, but we don't track for the region or for the city number of jobs lost. We don't do that.
Okay. My other question has to do with there's mention of the funding from the provincial and federal governments. When do we expect, I don't know if this is a staff question or for you, but when would we expect to learn more about those programs? Because it says that they're a bit precarious at this point.
They are. I sure hope, through the chair, I sure hope by the end of the year, we've made some progress with FedDev Ontario and with the province. I actually had a chat with the minister about an hour ago. He's aware of the ask. It does help that 6 of the regional councils, so 4 townships, the region, and the City of Waterloo have approved the MOU. Obviously, chances are they're going to wait till all 8 get across the finish line before they let us know, A, whether we're getting funding, and B, whether it's more or the same. But I think an important metric is that our $2 million base, which was established in 2015, has been the same, and we were challenged as a corporate organization in 2018 to seek federal and provincial support to augment. So we were able to increase our base by about 68%. So I am hopeful that because of the partnership demonstrated regionally, that the feds and the province will be with us. Like I'm quite confident, but I just don't know what the quantums will be, Councillor.
And has your ask from those 2 levels of government increased in a similar ratio as what you're asking for here?
It has, yes.
Okay. I think I still have time for one more question. When it comes to the FDIs, is there a pattern that you can share with us?
So over the last 8 years, what's pretty clear is, and I'll refer to, okay, so it's almost split 50-50. So there have been 46 greenfield new foreign direct investment opportunities, 41 local expansions. That shouldn't surprise us because most of our growth will come from our existing companies, even the subsidiaries of existing multinationals. That's important because that cements the need to work with our economic development partners to look for corporate expansions. We're going to be visiting some corporate headquarters in a couple of weeks in Germany to say thank you for the investments they've made. And that's important because when a company, for instance, like PWO, invests tens of millions of dollars into the city, like you don't send an email of thanks, you go to headquarters and say thank you for the continued vote of confidence. I'd say the pattern has been much smaller tech investments over the last couple of years, and I think that's in large part due to the downturn in valuations in technology companies. They've all received major haircuts. A lot of them are downsizing or right-sizing, and they're not doing a lot of expansion. So we've seen that for sure. But the continued interest in advanced manufacturing continues to demonstrate itself. We just had a couple of periods of long pauses. So at the beginning of the pandemic, March of 2020 through to November, it was a challenging period. And the mayor talked about the business and economic support team. That was set up, essentially to convey the concerns on the ground in real time to municipal, provincial, and federal officials, make recommendations on the kind of supports required, and then provide feedback. It was actually a very effective kind of virtuous loop. And in that period, I'm really proud of the fact that with our economic development partners, and this is across the region, we helped stand up 90 companies that started to manufacture PPE. So because, everything ranging from syringes to respirators to ventilators to masks to syringes for testing, and we ended up we actually had one of our best years ever. It's a great case study in management because we, actually told my board we wouldn't hit our targets that year, but we ended up doing better because we focused on what the community needed. But big trends, obviously, lots of interest in the region for supply chain localization. We learned the hard way through the pandemic that those supply chains matter. So in areas like food, med tech, health tech, agribusiness, and automotive supply chains, most of our major anchor companies are starting to reshore their partners in southwestern Ontario. So that's been a significant trend. Bigger projects, longer decision cycle, But I think from the standpoint of this council, the challenge continues to be, the downturn in tech and to make sure that we're there pitching the expansion in downtown Kitchener.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you, Tony, for coming in. It's always great to see your report. I look at it and go, wow, so for an investment of 35% of your budget, we're getting 40% of the investment coming out of there. So that's pretty cool. I'm wondering if you can maybe name a few companies for us that were big wins in Kitchener over the last year. I think that's helpful for our residents.
Okay, so 2023, definitely PWO Canada. That was an event attended by Minister Fedeli and Mayor Urbanovic on October the 2nd. And the value of that, I've got to be careful because they didn't release that publicly, but that was a significant win, like tens of millions of dollars. By the way, and that's a great, for any councillor here today, that is a keep in your pocket story because it's all about moving up the value chain to higher margin, higher value added investment based on investment in training and investment in digitization. So this company started off as a stamping operation and then they moved up the value chain to essentially be doing engineering design for Dearborn, for the Ford Bronco, for the Ford Edge. I know a number of the councillors were able to attend. I wasn't, I got COVID, and so I wasn't able to be there, but it was a great event. So that's one. There's another really important automotive AI company that whose investment was at about $24 million this year. We're still waiting to do the ribbon cutting on that. I can't name that company. Enlighted, that was an event attended kind of earlier this year, and that was in the range of just over $10 million all in. So a number of great wins. And so if we close something else before the end of the year, this number won't be accurate, but as of now, we're at $710 million from inception going into Kitchener, validated by companies. So, and as soon as we can disclose, we will. We have to be careful that the company says, okay.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of people that still have questions. One last thing though that I'll ask is when you're holding your annual kind of state of what you're doing, and then maybe all of council might be able to come out to that as well.
Yeah, through Chair Davies, thanks for the question, Councillor Johnson. It's slated for November the 30th. It's going to be in Kitchener at the Communitech Hub. I believe the invites will go out today or tomorrow. I'm just finalized the guest speaker, and I'm really excited to, well, I'm not going to preempt that, but the invites will be going out today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Tony, thank you for coming forward and obviously presenting overall great work that Red Sea has been able to accomplish towards economic development in our region. And I think the proof is in the pudding. It's easy to see that the work has resulted in successful attraction of companies to our region with the initial contact by Red Sea. I think Mr. Mayor has raised an important point regarding the communication. More a preamble than a question, but hopefully you'll get to where I'm getting at, is I would hate to see silos, if they do exist or continue to form, whereas you have Red Sea, you have Communitech, we have our municipal economic development departments, some that do better work than others. Where do you see the collaboration? And how much more collaboration do you think can exist with Red Sea and the City of Kitchener?
So through Chair Davies, thanks for the question, Councillor Singh. Our relationship with the City of Kitchener Economic Development Team is exemplary. And, I don't think the results would be as impressive were that not the case. We have monthly huddles, that include our marketing folks, our Director of Business Development and Client Services. We, you ask a really good question about the broader ecosystem. So is it perfect across the region? No, but in terms of Communitech, we're actually an important provider of deal flow to Communitech. You know, companies like Constant Contact, that's a quote-unquote Kitchener win, great name brand. Recently landed an Indo-American company that's not public, but they're at the Communitech Hub. Communitech recognizes the role that we play in helping to bring them new corporate clients. And I would say across the ecosystem, whether it's UW Velocity, some of the work going on with Medical Innovation Exchange and the Life Sciences Innovation Arena, soon to be kind of ready for new anchor tenants. The relationship with Kitchener, I mean, I have no complaints or issues. I mean, it's, you know, across the region, I think the biggest challenge is what I call our anchor company call initiative. So in that, let me explain what that is. That's essentially 3 cities, 4 townships. You know, each of those entities need to have, for the cities it's bigger, 20 to 30 to 50 anchor companies that really matter and that should be, you know, nurtured, and, you know, we do joint calls. In the case of the townships, it's much more important, you know, because, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 of the companies might make up a big part of that municipal township's tax base, you know.
So I'm just going to kind of dig a little deeper, right? Because we have a little of a aspect of limitation on time on the questions.
Sure.
When you talk about that collaboration, and I'm happy to hear that it exists with our economic department, and perhaps Mr. Bloom can kind of elaborate more on that. Sure. But additionally, when you guys are courting a prospective business coming to our region, not necessarily City of Kitchener, just our region as a whole, do you engage with our different mayor's offices in a way of, you know, using their leverage and their, I guess, their leadership or their name personas to be able to make a little easier inroads as that first point of contact with these companies, an aspect of courting? Are you courting alone through Red Sea, or is there a way of a grander effort from the mayor's offices and the Economic Development Department as well?
And hold that thought for just 1 second, just to finish up the last question, Mr. Bloom.
So through the chair, one of the adjustments that is recommended with this new MOU, which I think this council will appreciate, that wasn't in the previous agreement, was if a local municipality, like the City of Kitchener, just identifies either certain sectors or certain areas within our community that we think should be a focus collaboratively, then Waterloo EDC is more than open to figuring out how we collaborate on that, and it's specifically in an agreement. I think on an annual basis, council could suggest it, and then Tony his team has an opportunity to adjust. So I think that's a great message from Tony and his team that, yeah, this is really all about collaboration and how we identify opportunities together.
And so I'll just kind of ask a little further, when an economic mission is taking place, does that may not be led by Red Sea, does our Economic Development Department reach out to Red Sea to perhaps provide a executive summary of key businesses that may exist in that region that may be a good point of contact as part of that engagement through the economic mission?
I think what I would suggest is the relationship between Waterloo EDC and the City of Kitchener is very much, if Tony sees an opportunity, he engages us, and likewise, and we always try to make an approach together so that it's not one or the other going, it's us collectively. One may take a lead at a time, depending on who the lead is, but we're always trying to go step by step.
I'll just leave it with saying that
Councillor Singh, just a second, and Mayor Benovich wanted to add context.
Very, very quickly, because I think I can, since the question asked was, do they connect with the mayor? And the answer is absolutely. I mean, there is regular lines of communication in both directions. And, you know, I'll give you just one quick example of that, even on something that wasn't directly city related. Some of you, I think, are aware that I, you know, on my own, accompanied Minister Champagne to a visit to Croatia that he did earlier this year. It was an opportunity to highlight some Kitchener things and some Waterloo region things. A visit like that, and my involvement in something like that, doesn't happen without talking to Tony and seeing how can we also use that as an opportunity to talk about things that are of mutual interest to the broader region.
I know I've gone over my time, if you just would allow me to say that. I think this is a really added point. Sometimes perhaps our mayor can be a little humble and not asking the help that may not be required, but the fact that that already exists, that collaboration, that question wasn't in any way a sense of criticism. It's just to highlight the important role that collaboration can play and has played, and more importantly, additional step that Red Sea can take in future missions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony, for the presentation. Appreciate it, or rather for what you've shared with us so far. Just interested, when you're marketing Kitchener, I know we talk about the region at large, but specifically when we talk about the city, to executives, have you ever heard any hesitation or any challenges from anyone, and what would that be? So that way, at least on our end, whatever we need to do to allay fares moving forward, whether it is the 1% that have issues, interested in just hearing about that.
So through Chair Davies, that's probably the most important question today, because our business is all about overcoming objections to making Kitchener, I'm here at Kitchener Council, but Waterloo Region generally, a home for a new investment, a new R&D facility, or maybe a new headquarters, moving a headquarters. As far as Kitchener specific, short answer is no, except for some large capital projects, the encampments with an S have come up as a non-starter for companies. And, we were specifically told in one instance that unless the situation were resolved to their satisfaction, the locations being looked at the site would not be an option, right? That's an extreme example, but it exists as something that is, it's not just a Kitchener issue, it's a regional issue, and it's an issue in, I hate to say this, but it's almost in 2023, it's a sign that you've made it when you have encampment issues in terms of being globally significant. And so all major cities that are of interest because of their talent, because of their vibrancy, also have this challenge. So it's a bigger deal. It's one of the reasons why we're going to be a lot more active on the social justice front. There's a number of things that we can do with corporates to be part of the solution, but that's the only kind of real roadblock, I think, or where it's been, a deal breaker for some. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Anedis.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you, Tony, for coming in. I just want to preface my statement that before I get into my questioning, by no means that I full-heartedly support what Red Sea does for the community. I think it's a great asset, and I think it does quite a good investment in general for the community. My only concern here is, and I'm looking at this as an equity lens, and I'm very concerned what I'm seeing here and what the townships and how they are what their contribution is towards this, and just wondering, how is this negotiated?
So through the chair, the CAOs and our board and negotiating team took a deep dive on capacity for each of the funding partners, and the back and forth included all the 8 CAOs, and so the negotiation was one of trying to get to a more sustainable path for the organization and essentially sustainability for each of the funding partners. That would include the townships, the 3 cities, and the region, where, it's clear the heavy lifting, the lion's share is coming from the cities and the region, and the townships have essentially remained flat for a range of reasons which, I think are probably best explained by people other than myself, because it's just kind of where we landed.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm aware of it. Yeah, clearly the cities in the region are doing the heavy lifting here. And it's probably because of the results, you know.
Okay, so, and just with the one chart that I see here, you have total investment by
Yep.
municipality and wins by municipality. And if I extrapolate the amount of funding that the townships put in, it seems to me they're getting the better end of the deal here.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, they don't have any economic development capacity with the exception of Woolwich. One of the townships actually has not received any investments over the 8 years, so it's a little bit skewed. You know, the opposite of the law of large numbers is that, you know, one major investment like a Conestoga Meats expansion will skew it for all of the townships, right? And so I think, and that was a fairly significant capital expansion. So I think we might be reading too much into the numbers that are skewed by one large investment in the township of Woolwich, right, Councillor? So,
Okay.
okay.
All right, Tony, thank you, but keep
Yep.
up the great work.
Great question,
as always.
thanks. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you, Tony, as always, for coming in. Always great to hear great news. I'm really excited about the coming health innovation arena, and I know there's already been some scale up done from Velocity Health. I think when this opens up, things are going to explode. There's going to be so much good coming up. Do you foresee any challenges for people scaling up, finding places to move to?
If you're talking about homes for the talent coming in, yes. But if you're talking about you know, commercial space in the actual health innovation arena, I think we're really well positioned. We have the room, we have the space. Very excited about the you know, Velocity being the anchor tenant in the health and innovation arena, and there's going to be more to come. And it's what's great about the execution part of this strategy is we've been aligning on strategy for a few years, right? And it's not just the City of Kitchener, University of Waterloo, Velocity. It's actually the province in a very significant way, not only as a partner, but having declared through Invest Ontario that health innovation medtech is an anchor priority for them, and that's true of the feds. So in terms of our deal flow and our ability to find, you know, qualified companies to add to the innovation arena, I'm excited about the opportunity, and you know, we're already fielding questions about, when can we move in, and you know, can you give us more details about the opportunity? So it's a very exciting time.
Great. Well, thanks for the reminder about the housing, because that is very key. Thank you.
Sure is, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks for coming in today. I want to go back to one of the comments you mentioned during the early parts of the pandemic, how a few companies in the city really pivoted to start to produce some PPE. And I think, if anything, what we learned throughout the pandemic is, especially the early stages, that we rely too heavily on foreign suppliers. And so you're right, there were a few manufacturers that stepped up during the pandemic. Those companies, are they still, I guess, manufacturing PPE today? And if not, can we help them come back?
So short answer is most of them are not. Longer answer is that most of them did it almost as a side hustle that the community needed. So Woodbridge Foam, huge auto parts company, not their core business, but they made masks when they were needed. Mitchell Plastics helped with syringes. Again, side hustle, not their core business. Those that were kind of single product, when I think about companies that were exclusively devoted to manufacturing PPE, most of those, and there weren't many, most of those were not able to come up with a viable business plan. The good news is you need a horrible health situation for that to continue, right? And it's good that things have quote unquote normalized. But that's kind of the lay of the land. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you for that answer. Two more questions. So I noticed in year 27 and 28, the funding is tied to the CPI. So how come it wasn't done prior to those last 2 years of the agreement?
That's a good question. When the corporation was essentially launched in 2015, the idea was let's, give it a bit of money, hire a CEO, have that individual on the board, and the board was very helpful, build a team, and then once it reaches kind of startup, scale up, then we'll put in a new funding agreement. 2018, for a number of reasons, not the least of which was, can you prove to us that federal and provincial partners will step up, that this is a viable thing? The focus was to very, kind of move expeditiously and renew it for 5 years. And that had a lot to do with keeping some senior people that were, kind of worried about, well, if this thing's not renewed, maybe I'm in the wrong job. And so it was an oversight, should have been included, because we have really felt the pinch. Now, we have been able to bolster our overall funding by 68% from federal and provincial partners, but we can't rely on that. So, this year, as we scale up, I think in the last 2 years, we, through the CEOs, and there was a fairly deep dive on it, we aligned on, given where inflation's been, let's agree to support inflationary costs after we kind of ramp up to a base amount. But, I take some responsibility for that. I should have, and I didn't do it.
Okay, no, and again, thank you for the answer. And my last question, I guess, would be tied with this funding model. Do you foresee the annual increases of actually being enough to support what you believe and all the other members need, what we need to do to pursue more opportunities for our region and for our city?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Getting to 3.2 was important. We don't get there right away, but that was important for our sustainability, because we will continue to leverage CECI funding, which are the support for some of our inbound missions, for our lead generation activities, for some of our marketing. And I think the federal and provincial governments in some form will be with us. Now, if they suddenly drop out completely, then it might be a challenge in the future. But the 3.2 is our sustainability formula, because during tough times, then the role of the organization can change. We're currently 14 full-time employees and 2 co-ops, and the good news is you can take Kitchener AcDev staff, Cambridge, City of Waterloo, and even the one individual in townships, and you're not going more than 40 people for a community of 650,000. So I think it's a fairly lean, modest economic development capacity, but we did need a fairly significant jump up to be able to be sustainable. So I think we're there now.
Awesome, thanks, and thank you for your time today.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy.
Thank you so much. It's great to get these check-ins with you to learn more about the bigger picture and the successes. I have a few questions. One, recently our area was deemed the most diverse place in Canada. Can you speak how you can leverage that in your work to make sure that we have a diverse set of investment partnerships to build on that?
A couple of things. So we definitely reflect that in our marketing. So when we pitch the region and the City of Kitchener in particular as dynamic, diverse, and dense, the 3 D words, right? Dense because there's a lot of globally significant talent, globally significant companies headquartered in Kitchener. The diversity aspect, which is reflected in the numbers, helps when we pitch Kitchener as a welcoming host community for new talent. And that is, so there's global marketing. So when we're speaking to an Indo-American trying to move, their country lead outside of the U.S., the fact that Kitchener is diverse helped. And in fact, we landed an Indo-American company that landed in the hub literally 2 weeks ago. And so, it's a core part of how we market the city and the region, because it's not just about market opportunity, cost structure, and talent. Increasingly in knowledge-based industries, it's about the talent. And talent won't move to a region unless they feel comfortable that they'll feel welcome, that their loved ones will be able to feel the same way. They'll have places to live, places to worship, places to eat. Have fun. So all those amenities are really important, and we build that into the overall pitch. And it's not just for smaller opportunities. Some of the larger requests for information from multinationals on big projects, they get very granular, and they ask about daycare spaces and physicians, because increasingly, how are they going to get their senior people to start a new important venture in Waterloo Region, and specifically in the city of Kitchener, if they don't want to move there, right? And so it's very important from that aspect. I think I addressed it, but if I didn't, please continue.
No, that's good. I guess, I wonder if your mix of staff and like where you seek out opportunities matches that, that's like other layers to it.
Our mix, so admittedly, if you look at the 14 people in the 2 co-ops, we're quite gender diverse, but we are lacking as far as visible minorities and a range of other, and that's again the law of large numbers. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative has made a tacit point as we grow to make sure that we better reflect not just on gender, but the broader targets that we have set for our hiring. So that is something that we're keenly aware of. We had a board meeting last Thursday, and that was central. And we looked at are there things within our hiring processes that are inhibiting or kind of being an issue, or preventing us from getting to the right mix? And the short answer is no, but we definitely, in terms of the actual hiring, have to be more deliberate, I think, going forward.
Thank you. I'm glad it's on your radar. I know that tap on the shoulder means a lot, and like bringing in the local talent we have from different ethnocultural communities would be great to see. I'm glad to hear you say childcare. That was my other concern. I know that you mentioned the barrier of housing and the homelessness crisis we have in Kitchener. Do you do any advocacy? Like we're hearing about it here, but as we know, this is an issue that involves many levels of government, and it's good to go to those levels of government. I know there's an appetite for economic development, but how do we share those barriers that we're facing? I know AMO is great at that, and thank you to the mayor for participating in that advocacy, but how does our economic development communication address those barriers?
Yeah, so through the chair, we do some kind of targeted advocacy, especially when there's a specific opportunity around it, and we've had some success working with the region of Waterloo, for instance, on daycare spaces, but we're not, I won't hide the fact that we're not the lead horse on it for sure, and part of the challenge is priorities and focusing on those things to advocate for, like employment lands, really important to our organization. I mean, you must know that the region has the lowest industrial vacancy rate in the country, and in fact in North America, right? So we've got some work to do on employment lands, but we're keenly aware of the issue, and we kind of pick and choose our spots, but it's not, we don't wake up every day focused on advocating for daycare spaces. I'd be lying if I even pretended that we did, okay?
Yeah, no, it's good to know how it fits into the mix, right?
Yep.
I think every type of advocacy matters in these days. And yeah, I'll leave it. I hope, I'll just say one comment is I hope we can seek out more green tech innovation. That's something I'd like to see in the city. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think everyone's had first round. Tony, you're getting the full court press here, it seems.
Bring it on, I'm good. Actually, this is,
Yeah.
I don't do this often enough, so.
I don't remember seeing it in the report, but what is the support you get currently from the federal and provincial governments?
The federal government provides $600,000 a year, and that deal is expiring at the end of this year. It was a 5-year, $600,000 allocation, and the transfer payment agreement is really to fund projects. Okay, so it's helped us to support 1 or 2 bums in seats, but that's it. The provincial government, it's gone up and down. We were shaved. It started off as $400,000 a year. It got knocked back to $250,000 in the first year of the Ford government. The last couple of years, in large part, I would say because of our joint success in working with Invest Ontario and our providing deal flow to the province, they've upped it to $500,000 a year. There is zero support for ops and staff with that money. It essentially supports marketing programs. So I mention that because it works out to about 1.1 million right now. I'm hoping that'll be augmented or at least be stable, but just want to remind folks that that does not support operations, right? It doesn't support staff, it doesn't support, facilities and, kind of the core business.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. So again, looking at the numbers, it is a significant increase, whether it's our local level or across municipalities, something like 60% over the next 3 years total. Is this, I'm assuming the intention here, and maybe you can add to clarity, is this to maintain where we are, or is this will this actually help us to increase, or is that contingent on what the feds and the province does?
So, excellent question. So 8 years of flat funding has meant that we've needed 68% additional funding from the federal and provincial governments on top of the 2 million. The bump into 6 is to maintain and keep us stable. If the federal and provincial governments come through, then we'll be able to execute on, I would call a modest expansion with more support for, local FDI, for what I call anchor company call initiatives, and even some township economic development, what we call rural and peri-urban investment readiness, which is lacking in the region. We have, when you think about the townships, you have to ask yourself, is it the next 10 years all about aggregates and gravel pits, or is it something else, right? And so we have to be ready for the future.
Yeah, thank you, and I realize I asked that question as if the broader economy is a static variable, which obviously it is not. Mayor Banovic, I think you had one quick question and comment as well.
Yeah, I just want to, I don't think it's been moved yet.
It has not.
Okay, so I'll move it, Mr. Chair, just so that Mr. Lamantia doesn't think he's still on the hot seat. And I will just say, and this is just sort of also building on Councillor Ioannidis' question, I think the approach that we've taken here within the region has been a wise one. And I will use a line that the former mayor of Toronto used when we talked about the Toronto-Waterloo Region corridor, and it's the notion that a rising tide lifts all boats. And as much as that's true of the Waterloo Region end of the Toronto-Waterloo Region Innovation Corridor, it's also true of us collectively. When we win new businesses to come and invest in our community, regardless of where they invest, we all win. When we have companies who decide to expand in whichever of our communities, and we keep those jobs here as opposed to potentially going somewhere else, we all win. And my favorite example, and Tony touched on it, is the Heroux DevTech one, where Heroux DevTech needed to expand quickly in order to be able to take on the contract that they won for the landing gear of the Dreamliner. Right. We didn't have any place for them to expand in Kitchener. We walked them down to Cambridge, held their hands as they walked through the Cambridge piece and located there. But in the end, they got other contracts and kept their Kitchener location open as well. And that's sort of a double win kind of situation. Because as we know, the employees of all these companies live, work, and play throughout our region, in our communities, support our businesses, and our overall ecosystem, and also having that mix of lifestyle choices, urban, on the LRT, suburbia, rural, attracts people of who have different interests. As some folks know, you take a look at a company like Google, they have people who live across the street, people who live on the LRT route, and others who, quite frankly, like the fact that within 20 minutes they can have a hobby farm and still work at Google. And that's, I think, a unique advantage, and Waterloo EDC and the partnership between the 7 municipalities in the region has really enabled that to thrive.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just close by echoing exactly that. That's what I was planning on speaking to. Frankly, I was surprised by the graph at how relatively well balanced it is. especially given the realities of, the employment lands available in Cambridge versus Kitchener, et cetera. That's certainly not an expectation of mine going forward. I can't tell you how many of my residents work in Cambridge or in Waterloo, and that's fantastic. So I just don't want, as much as we all want to be treated equally in terms of the opportunity, the expectation is if you come back in years and this chart is widely skewed in one direction, as long as the number's going up, I think we're all going to be happy, right? So it's been moved by Mayor Verbenovich. Those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, up next in the issue of municipal sponsorship, Mr. Matthews. You have a 5-minute presentation, I understand? Mr. Bennett, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Davey. I'm pleased to be here today with Dylan Matthews, our Program and Policy Advisor, and of course Corey Bloom, to reintroduce our sponsorship strategy. In 2016, the sponsorship strategy was introduced in order to monetize city-owned assets. A bit of a history: it was established in 2016 through the Office of Strategic Partnerships and was launched in Community Services. In June of 2016, staff report was presented and approved by Council, which included a municipal sponsorship policy and an initial inventory of municipal assets. In August 2018, the office moved to corporate communications and marketing as part of an organizational restructuring, and then in June of 2022, the office moved to Development Services Division and within Economic Development and Business Development. And that move was really facilitated to encourage and focus more on developing and building relationships with potential sponsors. A few sponsorship examples are: the most well-known one is naming rights with the R.B. Schweigel Park and Fields, program sponsorship, free skating through Jocelyn Insurance, event sponsorship through Chris Kindle, and in kind with free apples at community centers provided by Martins. The landscape has changed since the program was first introduced, and companies are shifting their programming now, how they view and support sponsorship. And it's really around their brand, their values as a corporation, and their employees' values as well. And, in order to determine that, we need to probe and engage those companies to find out most specifically what is important to them. So, for example, some groups may be focused on music or STEM or STEAM or youth-oriented programs. So we recognize that in order to have a successful sponsorship strategy, we need to shift this, and as a result, it needs to be more relationship focused. So the objectives of the sponsorship review that was undertaken was to review the policy, re-inventory the assets and programming, review how revenue should be allocated from sponsors, relationship development, as I've discussed, the marketing strategy through our communications team, and the ongoing sponsorship process support. So the policy review included us scanning over 25 different Canadian municipalities, looking at their policy and what the best practices within their industry are. The results were: currently our policy wording is comprehensive and is effective. The current wording has consistent language with regards to principles and conditions in comparison to other municipalities, and it allows us the flexibility to to advance the program going forward. The one proposed change is the revenue allocation. Before, the revenue was being allocated to the Office of Strategic Partnerships, and we're proposing that the revenue goes to the business unit and the actual asset or program that's being sponsored. We also did a re-inventory of assets. We reviewed the original inventory that was approved by Council. We provided you with a new inventory and indicated on there what are new assets going forward. Oops. Okay. So the re-inventory of the assets. So we met with staff across the corporation to update the inventory, categorizing them by naming rights, facility, naming rights, programming, and community initiatives. As well, what we really need to focus on now in order to advance sponsoring these assets is data. Sponsors want to know, how facilities are being used, how active they are, the number of traffic that's going through there, demographics, and we also want to work with corporate communications to set up a new digital inventory. So I've talked about relationship development a few times now going forward, and what we want to do is we want to be proactive in building those relationships, not reactive as we have been in the past. So we want to develop a plan that will build capacity, but we can't do it alone. Everybody in this room has relationships that are very effective and that they work very closely with. And what we're asking is for your help and support. So all we want is you be able to hand over a potential sponsor to us and leave it to us. We'll do the rest. We'll develop the relationship. We'll negotiate with the potential sponsor and manage the fulfillment of that asset going forward. The marketing strategy. So we want to look at rebranding and relaunching the program. Nobody knows what the Office of Strategic Partnerships is, so we want to make it clearer. An example around that could be potentially Sponsor Kitchener. That hasn't been determined at this point in time. We want to develop new marketing materials in combination with corporate communications and explore an expression of interest for potentially some of our larger assets like Sports World. And this is really the process that we will go through a prospect that was looking to sponsor with the City of Kitchener. And that's just an example of the rebrand. It's not the rebrand going forward. So with that, we are here and we're welcome to take your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. There's at least 4 people in the queue at the beginning with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad this is here because I think we were just discussing this the other day about we haven't seen much of this and where this is at. So I think you must have been reading our minds. I guess my question with regards to, I didn't see in the report anything about hiring any staff in particular. Are we looking at anyone in particular to maybe hire someone that has dealt with this specifically, with this type of sponsorship?
So the intent with the relaunch is really using the business development team on relationship building moving forward. And then let's look at the results and see how effective we are in advancing sponsorships going forward. And as well, we have Dylan Matthews, who will be working on both the guidelines, the asset inventory, as well as the fulfillment of any new opportunities.
Okay. In the future, I'm prepared to move this recommendation, but in the future, if staff feels that I'm a big proponent of having someone that has expertise in this, and I know the business development does, but I think if we want to get better results, if we should have the proper staff in place to achieve those results. So I'm more than happy to support that if in the future if that's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Thank you. Councillor Agnew has beat me to it. Would have been happy to have moved this. This is something that's been a bit of a passion for a number of councillors that have been quite supportive of the sponsorship strategy, as well as the early onset when the strategy was formed, or wanting for us to, reach for the sky. That being said, we've had some wins, but not nearly the success that some of us had initially anticipated. So in speaking to that, first as a clarification, the appendix that is added, there's a number of items that are listed out as to sponsorship type, and then check marks for the new. I'm assuming new with a check mark is areas that will be a focus?
Through the chair, yes. That will be a focus, as well as the other assets that are listed in the inventory as
So
well.
everything that's listed in the inventory will be looked at, and then the ones that are checked off are just new that weren't there?
They were not there in the original report.
As to what was in the original report, going back in 2016, it's been some time, were there any areas that we had initially considered, perhaps there wasn't maybe appetite for that council to have included, and that hasn't been included now?
You want to take that one?
Sorry, Mr. Matthews. Wait a second here. Oh, I have to take one out of the queue. 1 second. Go ahead.
Through the chair, yes. The initial inventory did consider some other assets that are city-owned, specifically the Odd. Also, Centerton Square is a city-owned asset that the city does not manage, but it's nonetheless a city-owned asset. The opinion of council at that time was to not include those assets within the inventory. So those are certainly assets that, while they're not on this list currently, the inventory is meant to be a bit of a moving picture, and the intent is that ongoing on an annual basis that this list would be updated, and depending on the direction of council, new assets could be added or removed as desired.
Yeah, sure. Perhaps not on an annual basis where you need to consult with council and a report needs to be received unless you get expression of interest and you bring something forward. But would you say it would be prudent to each new term of council to have the policy review? I know this is happening automatically. Is this new term of council, you were a year in, but still, it seems to be at the onset, but just have it as a, as part of the bylaws that the strategy be looked at every 4 years.
Through the chair, yeah, absolutely. Because I think it's also important that it's top of mind with council for each term as well, just so that there's familiarity with the program.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what's included with it as well.
As this comes to council meeting, could staff circulate the list of items that weren't included in the past and still aren't included? You named a few, but I'm sure there are other areas as well.
To the chair, so those are the obvious examples, the ones that were removed. The other ones that were removed were either programs that were either no longer exist or particular assets that just aren't conducive to sponsorship at this time due to other circumstances. Just a couple examples might be some of the assets that were in McLennan Park, where at this time we're not in a position to move forward with any type of long-term sponsorship.
So what I'm saying is an owner's exercise to be able to just list that out and send it to council so we can have a look at and see if there does a merit, perhaps a revisit or second look.
Through the chair, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. The other question is, as part of the review that was already done, now, council wasn't necessarily consulted, but what type of overall review or for objectivity did we look at other cities and seeing how they may be leading? And I'm not talking about necessarily naming of fancy buildings and parks or whatever, but I'm talking about really the low-hanging fruit. We're currently looking at the park dedication program, which is parks and benches, but our parks are far more than just parks and benches. It has a lot of other amenities that perhaps smaller businesses can take leverage on in recognition of name and also adding a park feature to overall improvements.
Through the chair, so absolutely, yeah. So, and the intent is to be ongoing, have dialogue with staff internally for if there's any assets that they feel that they're able to move forward on. And in terms of your question about what other municipalities are doing, there has recently been a relaunch of I call it a support group, but it's more so a group of employees who perform similar type roles with municipalities across Canada, and they've sort of relaunched that to discuss items as you mentioned. So what are different assets of focus and opportunity to ask questions in terms of what municipalities are looking at and new opportunities for sponsors.
So as for the terms of reference of what council would be supporting now, there is a direction then that this would be ongoing review with other municipalities? Or does that need to be done through direction?
To the chair, so this doesn't have to be, there will be ongoing review with other municipalities, absolutely.
I have a couple more questions. Okay. The other is expiration of recommendations. I'm asking stuff that I was initially thinking about bringing, but I knew that staff were already underway, so I didn't want to be a redundant council direction, especially when staff are already looking at this. But expiration of recommendations of technology solutions such as online platforms or mobile applications that could streamline the initial expression of interest and understanding of the sponsorship strategy, as well as promoting successes. This is something I had initially wanted to look at as part of this review. Is this something that's been already earmarked, that we would be using technology, or initial, I guess, better presentation of what our sponsorship strategy is? So we could look at past successes as well as easily identifying future opportunities for potential sponsors.
So through the chair, and I might speak a little bit broadly, just to put a finer point on the shift that we are proposing here. What we're suggesting we shift away from is going to companies and saying, hey, we have this program, will you sponsor it? We have this building, do you want to put your logo on it? What we're saying is we want to go to companies and say, where do you have an interest in supporting sponsorship across the community? They may say, here is our focus, and we come back to them with an inventory to say, here are all the opportunities that we think might make sense for you, and you tell us where your interest lies. So I think, to your question about inventory, I think it makes more sense for us to come back to you if we're seeing, hey, there is a pattern of what our businesses want to support, and we either are or not providing that. And likewise, from promotions, it's really about how do we present these opportunities to businesses to encourage them to want to sponsor, or at least know that there's an opportunity, and we've got a team here ready to engage with them to help them find the right sponsorship opportunity for them. So it is a bit of a shift in approach and thinking, but I think it will help to address many of the questions that you're asking, Councillor Singh.
Okay, so perhaps, Mr. Chair, I may put forward an amendment for staff to look at this. I'm not in disagreement with what you're saying, but you're talking about is active engagement with the businesses out there. And what I'm saying is it needs to be done in tandem and not just one or the other, that we have a better articulated sponsorship strategy that creates a initial onlook by various businesses that we may never even consider. But the fact that we have this website that promotes the sponsorship strategy and the inventory with which that they can take opportunity on, and at the same time, as I said, we got to cherish and really celebrate the wins, and this platform can do that.
You've taken, if you could cue back in.
I have no problem with that.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I'm glad to see relationship development as part of this, because I think that's really important. I just want to be sure too, I mean, I'm all for this, but I just want to make sure that it's clear out there that the partnerships that we attract are going to be like tasteful and fitting to what we're doing within the city.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah. So I believe the policy tends to speak to that in terms of that any sponsorship opportunity is certainly reviewed to see if there's an appropriateness of the venue, if there's a match, if it's if it's like a youth program that's being sponsored, that there's an appropriate match of the actual sponsor as well. There's also some vetting of the sponsor. There's a connection with legal just to ensure that there's no issues moving forward with a particular company.
Okay, that's great. And I'm glad to see its programs, buildings and events. I could foresee the possibility of a sponsor for some of our downtown events, so we could have more frequent events, more diverse events, and maybe some bigger name acts in this event. Is that a possibility to go after?
Through the chair, yeah, absolutely. So those opportunities are identified in the inventory, and so that's going to be dialogue with internal staff within economic development in terms of how we can move forward and look for matches with those events in particular.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And as a business developer myself, I look at this list and I go, this is so exciting. This is something that I can see people on your team just wanting to really take a hold of this. So I was going to ask a question similar to what Councillor Ioannidis did, but I think from what Mr. Bloom is saying is that you're going to incorporate this in for all of your economic development officers when they're out having conversations, that this is some new opportunities here for them to get involved with. I'm much like Councillor Ioannidis. I kind of lean in the direction that it'd be great if you kind of had that one person that was looking to do that. But maybe if you just want to comment a little further on that.
And through the chair, and again, what we're hoping is all of us play a role in at least identifying opportunities. As members of council, you may be working with a business in your ward who has expressed, hey, I have an interest in supporting programs, and really Dylan's role becomes to help all of us coordinate those efforts to make sure that there are no opportunities that are missed. But they're flagged, we follow up, and Brian's team and Dylan will take it the rest of the way. So I think it's really about mobilizing all of us in that effort and not simply relying on one person to try to accomplish all of the work by themselves.
Yeah, thank you. And to that end, I would have also moved it as well, but so you've got a lot of support here, and I'm hoping that we'll see this come to our EDAC meeting as well. I think they'll be very supportive of this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janot.
Thank you, Chair. So anecdotally, would you say sponsorship is down across the board? Whether it's citywide or provincial-wide. Like I think of TIFF, Bell has left TIFF, and so that was a major sponsor for them. So are we going to be able to get sponsors for some of the things that we'd like to be able to sponsor?
Yes.
Naming rights.
Through the chair, so definitely based on discussions that have been had with staff in other municipalities, there was definitely an impact with the pandemic coming out of it in terms of, but the biggest one that we're trying to address through the strategy is that sponsors definitely being more strategic in the areas that they're looking to invest. They're really looking to align their corporate brand and their values with opportunities. So that's part of the work that we're trying to do is to make more matches where probably in the past there may have been maybe a little less focus. It was just all about getting the name brand out there, whereas now they're really drilling down into areas that really match their company values.
Okay. Are there any? Can you say not for sure, but are there any city venues that are close to having a major sponsor? I think of, I might get beat for this, but Bud Park. Bud Park, Bud no longer exists in the city of Kitchener. We all know it as Bud Park, but I think there's an opportunity. So would you kind of layer what the important venues are or different strategies to get some of the bigger sponsors?
Yeah. Through the chair. That's a great comment. And if you'll notice the inventory, Bud Park is on that inventory moving forward. And you're right, Bud is no longer around. So there are opportunities either for different sports fields through Bud Park. Maybe it's a soccer fields as one sponsor, the baseball diamonds another, moving forward. So that's a very good comment, and that's something that we were considering.
Okay.
And maybe if I could just again, through the chair, with the exception of some of the new facilities that are coming along at RBG Schlegel, again, I don't see our team out there saying, hey, we've got a building, do you want to put your name on it? It's if we have conversations with an organization, say, hey, I really care about soccer and I care about youth soccer, us having the ability then to go say, hey, would you be interested in a sponsorship of the Bud soccer field, for example? So just wanted to make sure council's aware of the process and the approach we're looking to take.
Okay, thanks, guys. And last question. I get the sense this is just, maybe I'm wrong, for organizations or for businesses. Are we open to individuals sponsoring benches or trees or paths? I know I brought that up, I think, last year during budget times. Like, are we open to that? If somebody wants to donate a whole whack of money to rename something after themselves, as long as they, pass all the tests.
So through the chair, so the focus of this work really is around sponsorship as opposed to dedication. So I may defer to Ms. McGoldrick, who may speak more about dedication.
Okay, 1 second. I just got to take one of you out of the queue for a moment. Ms. McGoldrick, go ahead.
So through the chair, the City of Kitchener staff and parks are currently undertaking a dedication program review. It was incorporated as part of the scope of the Places and Spaces strategy and further defined through the motion brought forward by Councillor Singh that Council supported. And so that is an ongoing body of work and will be brought back in spring of 2024.
Thanks for the reminder. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovich. Oh, apologies. Can you cue back in? There we go.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And yeah, happy to support this. Appreciate this coming forward. The only thing that I would say that we should also build into it, and it kind of fits in with relationship development, but it's just that ongoing relationship management. I think one of the things we don't always, or historically, we've done well in terms of getting either the donations or the sponsorship, but we haven't necessarily maintained those relationships on an ongoing basis. Whether it's ongoing simple annual thank yous to, continuing to build that going forward. And so I just really wanted to flag that needs to be a key part of this going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you. I support this, but I just had a question about, when you have corporate sponsorship, sometimes there are strings attached to those donations. And I was just wondering if that's been an issue at all for you and how you manage that.
Through the chair, so yeah, I think it's important to stipulate or distinguish between donations versus the sponsorship, which is a different wording within a contractual agreement that we would have. And I think the important thing is how it's vetted in the agreement in terms of what the obligations are between the city and the sponsor, and also what the opportunities are for either party to actually withdraw from the agreement as well, should the landscape change, economically or otherwise. And that's something that we would definitely work closely with legal to ensure that there aren't any red flags in that matter.
Right, and I was thinking more with new assets when I asked that question, but that's fine.
Yeah, to the chair. So to this point, no, there haven't been any specific issues that come to mind.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I actually have a few questions on this. I'm very interested as well. First off, actually, just a clarification, if I could. Does anyone recall why the center in the square is not in the list? I thought I heard you say, Mr. Matthews, not in the list. I wasn't sure if it was because we were uncertain how to split that with the center itself, or if there was other issues related. Or Mr. Bloom, do you recall? Oh, sorry, who's?
Through the chair, I was not involved in the discussions, but my understanding was part of it was that it is a building overseen by the Center in the Square board, and it may be a conversation that needs to be had with the board first.
Okay, because yes, my understanding was the board. Okay, that it's not removed by us, is what we're saying. Okay, understood. That's helpful. Oh, sorry, Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, just on that though, and I mean, we'd have to go back and look, because you'll recall, or you might recall, that the Werner family made a substantive gift to the Center in the Square that at the time, if I remember, was around $5 million. but they declined a renaming of the building. So we would have to look at what the conditions of that gift were, if any, with the center that may have, and what the time period is that's associated with that.
Okay, and I would ask us to look into that because I think that's a primary asset if we were to look at this. In terms of the changes, the redirecting of revenue to assets or program, I see where you're going and I agree, but is there a risk in limiting it at all? Why don't we just have the sponsorship and then where the revenue actually goes to be determined by staff? Like I'm worried about that limiting in and of itself.
So through the chair, I think our approach would accomplish that. I mean, what we've found more recently, taking an event, for example, if they're giving money or a program, they want it to go to that program event because they see it doing great. They don't want us to say take 50% and put it into a general fund. So that's, but what we're suggesting is where they've given a certain amount and we don't need all of that funding, and they're saying you then determine what you do with the balance of the funding. What we're saying is at that point, either staff make a determination or if it's a substantial amount, we'd come to council for your support and direction on where we would place the excess funds. But what we're seeing from corporate partners is majority of it is going to be solely focused on the actual initiative that they want to focus on.
Okay. I see huge opportunity here, and I guess I've always, I don't know, over the years, not to make too much of a comment, but unless there's someone like specifically driving the agenda here, I'm worried that if we leave it to informal conversations, we're not going to realize the potential that's here in terms of sponsorship. So I guess my question is, and Mr. Matthews has been referenced a few times, would this be Mr. Matthews' sole responsibility in the organization of City of Kitchener, or like I'm trying to understand, like just in terms of how to deal with this going forward?
So through the chair, this is his primary function, and part of what he'll be implementing is regular updates, reminders, engagements with key folks across our organization, so that it isn't just, he's not just sitting waiting for people to come to him and say, hey, I had an engagement, but he'll actively be making sure that we're all staying mindful of the opportunity.
Okay, so, and I'm going to put one more question forward. I'm not going to raise an amendment this meeting. I want to think about it between now and committee, but I'm seeing a lot of overlap between Councillor Singh's motion for park benches and other commemoration. I'm seeing a lot of private sector, even like investment in parks, like there's a basketball, even just in my own ward, a basketball court being built, a playground equipment being largely funded on a school, a lot of just straight up donations. And I'm wondering if there is a broader picture here to be made, for a business case to be made, to broaden this department to look at sponsorship and fundraising in general at the City of Kitchener and put some more dedicated staff toward that. So if I brought that forward as a motion, what would staff's response be?
So through the chair, what I would suggest is, Brian's team and the parks team can take that away to understand where is there a distinct divide between what is a commemoration versus a sponsorship. I think when you describe, sponsorship of a park, I think that is completely in line. If there's a company that says, hey, we want to donate X amount of equipment, I think that solely falls into this purview. When it comes to dedication for, say, family members that have passed on, I think that is more in line with what parks is. But certainly we're willing to go in and have a conversation and report back to council on the best approach.
Okay. Thank you. I think that covers my questions. Yeah, okay, sorry. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I think we're talking about two very same things. Councillor Davey, I looked at the same thing. Initially, when I approached staff in wanting to take a look at the park dedication, there was a component of the sponsorship strategy, and that's where I didn't bring forward the recommendation because I was informed that staff are already undertaking that review. So in clarity, and on top of what Councillor Davey has already asked, the question point is, again, apart from naming the entirety of the park, which, there's complexities that, especially when in neighborhood parks, if someone wants to dedicate a basketball, a court, or even a playground structure or exercise equipment that could be within a park, is there a process within the current strategy that allows name recognition of that item so that there is a recognition of that business?
So through the chair, yes, I think components of a facility are certainly part of the sponsorship program. I think what we're trying to create a distinction between is, the parks team developing a new park that's going to have 20 benches and they're looking for 20 different residents who may want to commemorate a loved one through that. That is a process that is best to stay with parks.
Agreed.
But if it's, to your point, if there's an exercise facility and there's a company that wants to donate it, yes, absolutely, that would come through our.
And so the policy currently does allow that and does encourage that?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's great. Mr. Chair, I should have sent it to maybe all members of the committee, but I CC'd you on the potential amendment. I did read it out. I sent it to you, Mr. Bloom, as well. I don't know if it's necessary right now, looking at it, or would you want some time for staff to review that, and that can be brought as part of council?
Or through the chair, perhaps I can share what our plan is, and if it may be exactly what you're suggesting in your amendment. So once we land on a rebrand, our intention is that there would be, whether it's through social media or other mechanisms, that we are promoting the fact that there are sponsorship opportunities. We're not simply waiting for a relationship to build, but we will be making sure that corporations are aware that this new focus is here for us. So I do see a marketing effort, for lack of a better word, to make sure that there's broad awareness amongst our business community, those that maybe don't have regular touch points with city staff or city council. So yes, that work will happen. If that is if that's the intention of what your recommendation is, then know that work will happen.
Yeah, I think there's synergy with what we're saying, but I think what my amendment takes a step further in saying there needs to be a bit of a not just the branding, but a landing page that really goes to celebrate and recognize, as what Mayor Vinovich has said, past sponsors, past success stories, and at the same time flagging future opportunities as well. So maybe we can talk more, and then that amendment can be part of council.
And through the chair, yeah, I think I would see us, as we continue to evolve this program, recognition being an important part of it. So I would agree with you.
Okay, on top of love my hood, love my business, maybe this can be love my sponsor.
There's no one else in the queue. Just by way of comment, I really believe that we might want to look at a larger business case in this space, because I think there's huge opportunity, and I think we do need more of we go out there approach versus wait sort of for the phone call to ring on some of these things, right? Like, I mean, using the Center in the Square as an example, if it was one, like how other people do it is they'll have someone that's savvy go out to like a CIBC and say, we would like this to be the CIBC Center in the Square. You're going to get this amount of earned media that we have through data collection. Your branding is going to be on the tickets, and the funding that you provide is going to go towards replacing the seats, and there'll be branding on that as well, right? This is the sort of thing that can save, frankly, save our taxpayers, many millions of dollars over time. So I think we need to have a broader discussion, especially in the light of how people advertise these days, right? I mean, the primary forms of advertising in the past, newspaper, unfortunately dwindling tremendously. TV, people have Netflix, there's no more commercials, right? Radio is dwindling. This is going to become a more prominent form of advertising because it's one of the few remaining ones that people are sort of forced to see. So I think I'm happy to support this now, but I'm going to just be clear that between now and council, I'm going to have some discussions with you guys and you guys and see if there's a way that maybe we can look at putting forward a business case to see if it actually is possible looking at expanding the work here. With that said, Councillor, I just move this? Those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thanks, guys. And that concludes Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Thank you very much. Up next, we have... Where am I? Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break, guys. Thank you.